Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy, our first Fallout post-World Cup break. My name is Matt Baker, joined by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, the jet-setting Santiago Beltran, fresh off his World Cup escapades. I am so thrilled to be back with Santi and doing a Fallout and doing an exciting Fallout. What more can you say? It's a 3-2 St. Louis victory to talk about. There's smiles, there's excitement all around, despite the fact that we haven't signed anybody and we brought most of our same team back into this match, but it was a win. That's all you could ask for at the end of the day. I was talking to a friend earlier, Santi, and I was saying that, from a long perspective, looking at this entire season, looking beyond, yes, we obviously need help with our roster. But as Corey Ray and Diego Gigliani work on the roster, it is important to win the matches you should win. And as we'll talk through it, I think we've separated ourselves enough from KC, even without the help. When you look at the underlying numbers, when you look at the entire match, how it played out, and we'll talk about all of the important matches. But welcome back, my friend. It's fantastic to have you back on Flyover Footy.
Thanks, Matt. It's been great. It's been great. We didn't have a preseason like the team did, but we're here.
No.
Enjoyed the World Cup, and it was a great experience. But happy to be here. Happy to be back talking about CDSC.
Well, let's go ahead and just get started with the pod recording. Usually we banter for a little bit, but it is as we're recording this, it's Friday afternoon, and we all have things to do heading into the weekend. So let's get going with the pod recording. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another edition of Fallout. It's our return to play Fallout, and it's a joyful one. It is a 3-2 St. Louis City win over Sporting KC. I am joined once again by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, fresh off his World Cup travels, escapades, road trips, flying. He's been to 2 different countries, at least 4 different states that I can recall, and I'm just thrilled to have him back on Flyover Footy.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be back. We didn't have the proper preseason as the team did before yesterday, but we're back talking about CDSC, talking about a win. What else could you ask for on a Friday afternoon?
I feel might as well be in mid-season form at this point. It's still July. We've got now 19 MLS matches ahead of us. 15 are behind us. And this team's rounding into a fairly impressive form if you take what they were doing back in May. This team is now riding a 6-match unbeaten streak, winning 6 out of their last 8 in all competitions. As Stu and I talked about on Flyover Footy last week, we're still in the U.S. Open Cup. We've got the semifinals happening in September, I believe. We have now separated ourselves from Sporting Kansas City pretty significantly. The standings that I looked at last night and this morning showed that we are closer to 3rd place in the Western Conference than we are to Sporting KC, who is in 15th and last place in the Western Conference. So if you're talking about separation, if you're talking about beating teams that you should be beating based on where you want to be in the table and where you are in the table, this was an important match. And not just an important match because of the rivalry and what it means on the intangibles and the fan fervor and the expectations and just the vibes, but important in that regard too, that we needed to separate ourselves from the team that had been a laughing stock in the first half of the season. Their own fans have just been frustrated to no end as they've really torn their club down to its roots as they look to rebuild it with Rafa Wicki and David Lee at the helm. And the progress for them is clearly much slower than our approach that we've taken with Diego and Corey Ray and how they're approaching this squad overhaul. So this moment in time, as we review this SKC match, Santi, do you feel, as I do, that we have separated ourselves in what you saw from Sporting KC?
Yeah, for sure. Regardless of the score, for me, and we had talked on our DMs, this was a must-win match. You carried some momentum from May, and there was a long break, but it was important to come back with a win against Sporting KC. If you think about it, last year City didn't win any games against the Sporting KC. The last win against them was towards the end of the 2024 season when both teams were basically out. So it was important to separate ourselves from them. They came 5 points away City, so if they had gotten 3 points, they would have gotten very close. And all the credit City got in May with that impressive impressive undefeated streak will have basically gone back to zero. So yeah, important win. Come back with a win with your fans supporting you, and yeah, it could have ended in a draw, but City was able to make the plays it needed to do towards the end to win the game and also to defend the result. Although we suffered a little bit the last 5 minutes, but yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, a lot of work to do, but I really like for passages what the team was doing with the ball and getting into spaces, doing quick touches. So you can see that the team picked up where it left off in May, and this 5 week preseason really helped too.
And I think that was to be expected a little bit, expecting the rough and tumble approach. So you're not going to have the same level of polish, I think, to everything as DeMay has had 4 or 5 weeks of preseason in the last month or so to enhance and really go into detail about what the players are instructed to do and what he's trying to do on both sides of the ball. There is an understanding that game state wise, this team had 2 friendlies and they're just getting back into it. So it could be looked at, and DeMay even referenced this pregame, it could be looked at similar to the Charlotte game. It's the first match after a massive layoff, and knowing that we're not going to be necessarily as polished as we otherwise would be in about 2 or 3 weeks from now. But also the heat and humidity, I think, played a factor on both sides. The game ended up getting pretty rough, pretty physical there towards the end. There were some interesting calls on both sides that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But there's definitely there was 2 halves as well to this. So there was the first half that had us dominating possession. We dominated most metrics, but in the second half, it did kind of shift over to SKC by and large. They controlled possession a little bit more. They had the field tilt numbers. So it was one of those games where I think we separated ourselves when it came to overall underlying analytics, and obviously we won the game. But there were some mistakes made by us that definitely made it seem like we were closer to SKC than we, I think, otherwise would have been. The Ben Lunt pass being one of those. Some individual play. I think our striker still obviously needs improved, to say the least. We'll talk about Betcher on holistically in a bit. But I mean, this is also a team still in flux. So knowing that this is not the team that we're going to take at the end of the transfer window, but yet it's still a team that, had they not made a couple of their own mistakes, everybody's talking about the goals allowed by KC as, you know, potential mistakes, and definitely their media and some of their folks in KC are imploding over some of the no calls and things that have happened that they make it seem like it was a 50-50 kind of a match. I definitely don't see it that way. I think that we gifted them the ability to get back into the game. So that's where I'm coming from when I talk about us separating ourselves a little bit. However, Santi, part of this conversation is our starting 11. So let's circle back a little bit to where we usually start our fallouts and talk about the starting 11, because even before the 11 was announced, we had an interesting development in that Christian Oliveras was recalled from his season-long loan to Sporting Club Jacksonville. Oliveras is our 3rd keeper and had been loaned out for the entire season to the USL Championship side Sporting Jacks. He has not had a good time down there. Sporting Jacks is in wooden spoon position in the USL. They have just had an abhorrent season. I think minus 21, 22 goal differential throughout the year. Oliveras has been their perennial starter at keeper, and he's been given no help at all. So when this was first announced, my thought is maybe this is a situation where you've seen the disaster that's happening down there, and you don't want to ruin one of your young keeper. Oliveras is 24 years old, 6'5". You don't want to ruin him by having that kind of experience. It's like the Miggy Perez experiment with Birmingham, where we didn't recall him early from it, but at the same time, you could tell it wasn't going well. And I don't think it really did much on the field for his development. And I don't think Oliveras, outside of just seeing game time, was getting any real benefit from being down there. So that was the initial thought. And then right before the match started, maybe half an hour, or actually, no, I think a few hours before the lineups were released, our friend Will Bratton, STL City Views on Instagram, had the scoop that Roman Berkey was not going to be in the match day roster for St. Louis City. And there was no further details to be had until post-game. And so I think we should kind of address that elephant in the room right now, looking at what Yoann Damet had said post-game about Roman Berkey. He was asked right from the jump on what the situation was with Roman Berkey. Yohan Demay said, listen, Roman came back from injury, which was his hip injury that he had suffered against Houston in the U.S. Open Cup. Demay said, we are assessing his fitness level, so he just wasn't fit enough to perform tonight. That's the reason why I didn't want to put him like on the bench or on the pitch. I think he needs a little bit more fitness before he can get back into the mix of things. That's the only reason why he wasn't dressed tonight. So the follow-up question that Tom Timmerman had post-game was, could he be back as soon as Wednesday against the LA Galaxy as we travel to LA? And Demay responded, like I said 2 days ago, which is when Roman Berkey was a full participant in training on Tuesday, a couple days before the match. Roman is available. He's available. But like every player, he's at a different level of fitness right now. Just have to make sure he ticks some of the boxes. The keeper is not a position that you can play a guy for 30 minutes and sub or play the guy for 45 minutes and sub him at halftime. It's a position where whoever is going to play for 90 minutes. We have to make sure he can perform for 90 minutes before we throw him onto the pitch. Santi, this in and of itself makes sense, and you can understand it. The Roman Berkey piece in and of itself. All right. He's had an injury in May. He's had a month or two to see what he can do, and he's still not quite there yet. That's not unheard of. We've had it happen in the past in situations where guys have lingering things or they're full participants in training, which is why he wasn't on the player availability report. He was a full participant in training, and so he wasn't required to be given a tag at all. That's what that was about. But we have had it happen where managers or coaches just play it safe, right? They're not going to name somebody to the matchday roster if they want to play it safe. They don't feel that they're a full go, or they don't want to risk re-injury or aggravation. You just don't want to take the chance. And I think if folks remember back in May, we were about as high in May as we have ever been on Ben Lunt. After that performance against Houston, going into Austin, I mean, the clean sheet, the PK saves, folks forget, I think, a little bit about how high we were on Ben Lunt at that time, his ability to back up Roman Berkey. He's always been pretty good, but he's always had this, okay, maybe he's, he doesn't take the best lines, or he has a propensity. He's not great on the ball, doesn't have good distribution, which we kind of saw in this match. But I still think that if Berkey is injured, Ben Lunt can start, obviously, but the Christian Oliveras factor is the really concerning and questionable aspect to this. I mentioned in bubbles each one of these things. In a bubble, why you might recall Oliveras with the situation. In a bubble, Berkey sitting makes sense. But I have trouble marrying the two things together. I have trouble understanding that if Yohan Demay is saying that Roman Berkey is ready, he's available. But his level of fitness, we didn't want to push him. Assessing his fitness level, didn't want to put him on the bench or the pitch, but following up, he's available. He's at a different level of fitness. That makes it seem like he's day-to-day, week-to-week, match-to-match kind of situation with his fitness. You don't, or at least I can't fathom why you would recall a goalkeeper from his loan if your starting keeper is just day-to-day, week-to-week. You're managing it as game by game. To me, and pregame, there was a lot of transfer talk. There was a lot of, where's Berkey? Are we moving him because of his contract? And this isn't something Ray actually wanted. A lot of speculation. None of it really has any roots in evidence, but a lot of speculation. And Roman Berkey was at the match. He was in the stadium with his wife. They were taking it in from the spouse section. And so Berkey was there. It's not like he was on his way to get a physical at another team kind of a thing. Far from it. So I'm wanting to get more details. I don't have any answers, but I'm wanting to get more details on how the Oliveras loan recall plays into what we're actually dealing with Roman Berkey, because my worry isn't transfer. My worry is that this is a longer, potentially lingering issue than anybody's giving it credit for. And we might be dealing with Ben Lunt and Christian Oliveras for quite a while.
Yeah, I think it's definitely related. Hopefully we find out more in the next few days. But yeah, the fact that Olivares was recalled, as you said, I didn't think much of it when it was announced, but then with the Berkey news, I thought there was some relation there. The way I'm thinking about it, maybe it's like something in between. Maybe Berkey is gonna be out for a few weeks, and maybe the team will put him on the short-term injury list. That way, Olivares won't take a roster slot, because that's the other thing. By recalling Olivares, you are occupying one more roster slot in the middle of the transfer window, where you're trying to bring more players. Which, by the way, we had Diego Gigliani yesterday in the booth at halftime, and he said there will be more transfers during this window.
And our friend Daniel Guevara said in our chat that Taylor Twellman was on Sirius XM FC, and he's absolutely expecting City to spend some money. So if you've been waiting, which all City fans have been waiting, it doesn't sound like we're going to have to wait too much longer. Mm-hmm. And don't let the fact that we haven't gotten rumors play into any of it, because Ray in his first window was notoriously tight-lipped. This is not an organization as it stands now that seems necessary or willing to allow rumors to leak from their side. And so once they reach the league office, once other teams get involved, that could be a different story, but there will be moves made. So this roster will change and improve.
Yeah, for the short-term list, how long is that if the team wanted to do that, Matt? Remind me.
I want to say 4 to 6 matches. Yeah, okay. I want to say 4 to 6 matches. But that could be an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the lineup itself, the starting 11 without Berkey, did include Christian Oliveras on the bench. The starting 11 was Ben Lunt, Dante Pulvera, Timo Baumgartel, Lucas McNaughton, Thomas Totland, Daniel Edelman, Edu Leuven, Conrad Vollum, Marcel Hartl, Sangbin Jeong, and Simon Betcher. The 3 areas, Santi, that I had looked at that we had some kind of answer to were center back, which wasn't either of my preferences at center back. Lucas McNaughton made the start over Falou Fall and Haziel Orozco. And then central midfield, attacking midfield. The answer to Chris Durkin being suspended was Edu Leuven drops deeper into the central midfield and Sangbin Jeong takes that spot at the right mid. Neither of those are too surprising outside of the fact that it really seemed like Demay's preference is for Leuven to be higher up in the attack based on where he primarily used him in the first part of the season, though he did drop him back when need be. So it's almost like Leuven is the preferred backup to Durkin and Edelman, as opposed to Miggy Perez getting that nod and keeping Leuven higher up, especially because now the puzzle pieces include a pretty in-form Sangbin Jeong, he might not be tearing the game up for the full 90 or all 70 minutes that he's in, but he's definitely taking advantage of his moments. And we talked about that in April and May, how Sangbin Jeong has come on and really taken advantage of those individual moments. He might disappear or not be a part of it for large stretches, but when he gets his moment, he has been taking advantage. And that's really nice to see. And it gives us that added dimension of speed that we have on that right side, especially in transition, that provides a lot of value to when he's in form to score goals. It provides that value. That's ultimately what we need, especially since we still have Simon Betcher at the 9. We need forwards and attacking midfielders that can score goals while having that defensive presence and quality on the ball at central midfield that Edu Leuven does. So no Berkey, no Falou Fall, no Miggy Perez in the starting 11. Those were kinds of the interesting. No Thomas Ostrak. I saw some lineups that can contain him in the starting 11. But also on the bench, some interesting. No Mamadou Mbake Fall wasn't on the matchday roster. No Brendan McSorley on the matchday roster. We did get Kyle Hebert on the matchday roster. We did get Miguel Perez. We got Makai Joyner on the matchday roster, but neither of those made appearances. This restart, Yohan Demay had kind of been building it up as everybody has a blank slate. Coming into preseason, yes, they all had their chances to win spots early in the season, but from a winning your spot perspective, it's a blank slate. And so that's why this is important to note to me is if it was truly a blank slate, Falou Fall, Haziel Orozco, they're all healthy, then seeing Lucas McNaughton start at center back, it's either McNaughton beat them both out, or there was something tactically that Demay wanted and saw out of Dante Pulvera on the left and Lucas McNaughton on the right, as opposed to Haziel Orozco on the right or Falou Fall on the left with Pulvera on the right. And after what we've seen from Orozco in the first part of the season pre-concussion and what we started to see from Falou Fall, I have a hard time believing that tactically against SKC, McNaughton could be that much better than either of them. This one was a really fascinating decision from Demay.
But he had a good game, so he backed it up too. He continues performing. So if you are the starter and have been the starter and you continue showing it up in practices and in games, it's very difficult to tell you, sorry, I'm gonna put this other guy that may be a little better than you, but hasn't proven it. I think it's a difficult decision. So that competition is on at center back. Dame mentioned that on the pregame press conference too.
That's right. And I think it'll be interesting match to match to see who ends up winning that battle. The one thing for sure, and this is where we kind of pivot from our starting 11 to the good, the bad, and if there's any ugly that. But I thought Dante Polvera had himself quite the game, not just in his regular work at center back, but in tracking back and in transition. He picked up where he left off against Houston and Austin, especially. He has been a player that a lot of lineups still had him at central defensive midfield. And this is one of those things where I'm sorry, I'm never going to have him in my starting. I'm not going to have him in the midfield in my starting 11. That is not where he's here to play. He has been an emergency option at the midfield spot only late in games. He just isn't that preferred option over Edelman or Leuven or even Miguel Perez at this point. But he is a preferred center back option over everybody except maybe Timo Baumgartel. And in the wide center back areas, we have all the evidence in the world to say that he is the number one option at wide center back right now, left or right, for Yohan Demay. And that's a statement when he came in from this season, not having any experience save a game or two at center back, and to be given this role consistently and has done so well evolving as the season has gone on. The timing, his speed, his ability to save goals in these 1v1s in transition, that's where he's really come up key. The game-saving goal against Houston will forever be in my mind as something that Polvera will be remembered for, but he continues to provide that. And he was one of the 4 man of the match options post-game on the City app, deservedly so in my eyes.
Yeah, he had a great game, and defenders don't win a man of the match often, especially if it was a high scoring game. But yeah, I'm impressed by the way he continues playing well and progressing. I remember the first couple of games he struggled a little bit with the ball, but even that he has improved a lot.
And timing. He did have issues and struggles. We're not going to ignore that or gloss over it, but he's improved enough since then that I think we've seen how much better he's gotten and efficient that he's gotten, and his timing has improved. He had the most defensive contributions with 12 in the game, 4 tackles, 3 blocks, 3 clearances, 2 interceptions, 5 recoveries. I mean, he did everything that he needed to keep us in it, and none of the goals allowed were on him either. That's huge, because early in the season we couldn't say that, and he's definitely grown into this role for sure. So that was an absolute good one for me. But we also finished this game offensively with a better goal number than our XG. We overperformed our XG. So finally, we're getting the luck to go our way a little bit. We're getting the finishing we need to in certain moments. Now, the PK definitely impacted that. So I think without the PK, maybe that wouldn't have been the case. But at the same time, a lot of what Demay spoke to towards the end of May was provoking the luck. And I think that third goal, Leuven's PK, happened because we actually provoked the luck. So that kind of mindset in our ability to continue pushing the envelope in the attacking third, creating chances. We created a higher number of chances in SKC. This is an area that I feel relates to us separating ourselves from them, is the number of quality chances that we created was so much higher than what SKC created. And we were able to finish and create errors on their side, forced errors, especially that handball, that I feel that this is still St. Louis searching for those difference makers who can consistently finish, but enough of them now are getting the opportunity and finishing, Hartle and Sangbin. And thank God Leuven took the PK. I'm just not a Sutter Step fan. And so I don't know if my blood pressure could have taken Marcel Hartle taking it, especially after seeing so many issues in the World Cup.
Oh, yeah.
But Leuven is so clinical and so perfect in that moment. So our goals and just the way that we were able to clinically finish and put ourselves in the right positions enough times and finish those. Because we've seen Marcel Hartle have a miss like that opportunity, Betcher to Hartle. We've seen a miss that would have been as egregious or even worse before against Austin back at the beginning of May. We've seen that happen. So we know that these guys are capable of missing these awesome opportunities, but they didn't against SKC when it mattered. And so I think that's one of the big difference makers. As this team is evolving and growing throughout the season with the same roster, you're seeing more times, especially recently, that they're able to finish these chances than what we saw earlier in the season.
Yeah, definitely finished some of those chances, but for me, the team created a lot of chances, as you mentioned, and it should have gotten to the point where Sporting KC, regardless of the mistake that was made, scored the equalizer. City should have put the game away, or at least make the difference larger, make it 3-1, and then SKC has to score 2 goals to tie it up. There were a couple of chances where the finishing wasn't great, but yeah, at least a couple of those the team was able to finish and got the 3 points. But I think there is still some finishing lacking, and maybe we'll see that improve after the transfer window.
Yeah, and I think you look to some of the stats in this game and some of the individual players. There are a lot of high performers that we had in this game: Marcel Hartel, Dante Pulveras, Simon Betcher, Timo Baumgartel, Leuven, Totland, Edelman, Sangbin. A lot of players who were performing with their goals added stat that's better than their average. And goals added is the stat that we like to talk about, which measures every on-the-ball action that a player takes, from shooting to passing, receptions, advancing the ball towards goal. So how many touches and is that a positive or negative towards your team leading to their attempt to score a goal? Fouls drawn, defensive actions, everything that they do. And so many of these players, the numbers for St. Louis are more in the green than SKC for sure. But you also had a few players like Conrad Wallem, who continued to struggle, it seems. And I think Conrad Wallem, while I say continue to struggles, he had his moments of value. Absolutely. The Sangbin goal wouldn't have happened if Wallem hadn't have put himself where he did on Stefan Cleveland, if he hadn't have headed the ball over to Simon Betcher to help create that entire sequence. We'll talk about that in a moment. But overall, I think, I'm not sure if it was the heat, the humidity, something he felt, but Wallem having to get subbed out early was really disappointing, because I think that played into the shift in dynamics between the first and the second half. So I need to see more. I still need to see more from Conrad Wallem. And this is probably the one thing that really continued from the first half that I feel we know we can get more from Wallem, but it's the one thing that really didn't improve or didn't stay at the level that it was in May. And that's unfortunate, because other than Conrad Wallem and the Ben Lunt playing it out of the back mistake, I thought this team was pretty polished.
Yeah, it was a good showing. I still think, and I don't know if we will ever see it, I still think Conrad Wallem will be better playing as a left wing back than right wing back. But I know Dame has his preferences, and he values what Wallem does, and the fact that he could play inverted and all of that. But it's just not delivering the production that the team needs.
No, I agree. Any other notable good or bad before we get into these goals? Because we've got 5 goals to talk about.
Oh, let's talk about goals.
All right. So if you're watching on video, we're going to show some scenes from the match, courtesy of STL Soccer News. Chris Gebhardt puts these on social media, edits them a little bit, and shows some tactical details. We'll talk through them otherwise. But the first goal came at 28 minutes. It was Sangbin Jeong unassisted after kind of a broken sequence where Marcel Hartel had possessed the ball centrally, gotten a flick over to Conrad Wallem, who headed it to Simon Betcher. Betcher couldn't quite wrangle it, and so it ends up being a little broken over to Daniel Edelman, who recovers it on the near camera side and plays it over to Thomas Totland, who's able to cross it in. And then it's kind of chaos with Conrad Wallem and Stefan Cleveland. That first touch by Edelman to keep the ball in the final third is hugely important. Totland with a good cross, not a great cross. I think it's a little too deep for where he's trying to send it towards goal, and it ends up creating the chaos. So it was a terrible move by Stefan Cleveland. He just did not approach that ball with enough aggression or able to wrangle it. And because it was a 50-50 ball that Conrad Wallem went up for, and Stefan Cleveland had no angle on it, Cleveland could have easily been called for the foul himself, much less the claim by SKC fans that it was a clear-cut foul on Conrad Wallem. I didn't see A, it was a clear-cut foul. B, I saw it could have been easily called on Stefan Cleveland for going over the top of Wallem, who had positioning. And at the end of the day, I thought it was an appropriate no call, because the ball was not possessed by anybody. Nobody had a clear-cut advantage. You could argue both ways. I could easily argue for Wallem, but I'm definitely happy with the no call. And then no matter what, Sangbin staying in the right position near goal, finishes it. I think he had like a 0.97 expected goals on target for that one, which the positioning of the shot and the point of on goal that he put it was just not stoppable. So that was the first goal by St. Louis. I thought it was a really, really well done job by St. Louis in creating that entire sequence, the putting the pressure and keeping the aggression in the final third. Great touch by Daniel Edelman to keep the ball in there. Good cross by Thomas Totland, and crashing the box like that from Vollum, who was the right wing back, putting himself in that position to remain in the box after receiving that pass from Marcel Hartl earlier. I thought it was a well done positioning that did help provoke the luck.
Yeah, definitely the way Edelman pressed enough to recover that ball. I think that was well done. And then Thomas Totland with the cross. Yeah, you were mentioning maybe it was a little bit long, but it still was enough to cause chaos. And I don't really see contact. I don't know why Sporting KC fans are so furious about it. And I thought they were busy, so I don't know why they are now not busy all of the sudden and commenting on this.
I mean, when you either have two choices if you're an SKC fan, Santi. I feel you can either be doom and gloom and complain that your front office has done nothing to improve your attack and woe is me, we have a terrible team right now, or you could try to shift the blame whenever there's a modicum of controversy in the call. There was a particular SKC account on social media that I'm not going to give visibility to the name, but they tagged Andrew Wiebe, who does instant replay, as asking him to look over every single one of the City goals scored because he felt they were all egregious and they were all questionable, which is just an absurd level of coping that I try not to get to from our side, though sometimes I do cross the line a little bit. But definitely here, I think you're reaching at least a little if you're trying to make this a foul against Conrad Vollum.
Hey, but maybe Wiebe, being a Kansas guy, maybe he will take a look at some of these. Who knows?
That's the test, right? That's the test to see how Homerism Wiebe is on this one.
Yeah, we'll see.
8 minutes later, there wasn't much time. City continued to be on the attack, and this is something that hasn't really gotten a lot of notoriety, but it's just 8 minutes later, probably 6 minutes in the run of play later, that St. Louis is able to put together another goal-scoring attack. And this one was actually one of the prettiest sequences that we've had all season in scoring a goal from the run of play. It started from a KC throw-in to Ian James, one of their defenders. He threw the ball in and then he was able to recover it. St. Louis had the triangle pressure on James, and it was Thomas Totland who was able to break the ball free from behind. And it was a perfect touch by Totland. And once Totland gets it free to Edu Leuven fires it up to Betcher, and then he's off and running with our three-headed attack, Hartl, Betcher, and Sangbin. And this is where I give credit to Betcher. So I've been talking about Betcher a lot on social media right before we recorded this in a positive light. And I have to give caveats of, I know Betcher is not a good finisher. At time of recording, he is the worst single MLS player in terms of goals to XG. So his expected goals are like 4.7 and he's got one goal. So he's the worst single MLS player in terms of scoring goals to his XG. But at the same time, what he's able to do in this sequence is so appreciative, I would say. So Leuven getting the ball up to Betcher takes just a half a second to hold that ball up after he receives the pass right there, holding the ball up, pulling it back, lets Hartl take the space out wide, and then Betcher is able to draw three players basically in so that when he passes to Marcel Hartl, you freeze frame that pass, and it's Sangbin and it's Betcher running out in central end to the right side. And you have four KC defenders who have basically lost track of Hartl. It did start by Marcel Hartl having a perfect awareness and speed to outrun his defender almost from the onset, but he stayed wide enough to where he didn't involve himself in any of that other defensive pressure. And it was up to Betcher to have the perfect weighted pass to catch Hartl in transition. And it was one of the prettier sequences that I can remember. And it happens from Totland's initial attack. It happens from all three of the City defenders in that area. It was a great defensive structure that they had. Edu Leuven getting the ball in space and having that vision to pass. That's why we like Leuven as this deep lying playmaker, where he's given the space and the vision to pass the ball up and he can make it happen. And then Betcher's pass once he's up front. It's not Betcher's first pass either that is of quality as a through ball that's led to a goal. And this is an area where I think everything gelled just magnificently to put City up 2-0.
Yeah, this is Betcher's fifth assist of the season. So yeah, even though the goal scoring is not there, the finishing is still not there. At some point, he's gonna
Mhm.
get his goal and he's gonna start scoring. But at least he's contributing with the assist.
That's true, and that's part of my thing with Betcher is I think Betcher has a role on this team. Betcher doesn't have a role long term as a starting number 9. Still firmly believe that, but his role and his non-goal scoring talents are apparent. His off the ball work, his work rate, his housery, because we're a family friendly show here. Things he can do to get in the opponent's heads. The end
For
of
sure.
game where he was hit and it looked like he had just taken a bullet to the chest and he was just collapsing.
Yeah.
That was hilarious to me. My wife missed the initial play, and when she looked over, she thought Betcher was fainting because he
Oh
was just like
no.
going back down.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. But that's the kind of thing that I think Betcher brings. He does have good vision. He has good weights on his passes. He does have a high work rate. He is good off the ball in forcing pressure. He's just not good at scoring goals. And unfortunately, in that position, that's basically a requirement in order to be a starting person in this league or in any quality league. And so that's where I come with Simon Betcher. But I will say that defensively, this is one of those instances where it was scored in the run of play, but it was also scored off of a turnover. And that seems to me, reminding me that this is the biggest strength that this team has. It is forcing turnovers and creating advantages in the attack. Whether they are transition advantages, whether they're holding up the ball and they're able to create space between the lines, however that ends up looking, whether it's a 2-second sequence, a 10-second sequence, a 2-pass, or a 5-pass sequence. I think St. Louis's best work this season continues to be off of forced turnovers. And that is a credit to our defensive midfield. It's a credit to our instruction and awareness of what to do after you recover the ball, because St. Louis wasted no time in Edu Leuven spraying that ball high. And I want to see more of this. And I think this is how St. Louis is going to create more of their goals than not. But Santi, it wasn't very much longer after this, right before half, in one of the 3 most dangerous areas you could possibly allow a goal, that St. Louis conceded their first. Those 3 being the very beginning of the game that sets the tone, right before half, that sits with you at halftime and forces you to adjust, and then right after half. Those 3 moments, I will continue and forever saying, if you allow a goal or you score a goal in any of those 3 moments, you have changed significant portions of the game and you put yourself at that much more of an advantage. Now here, the 42-minute goal by Capita, unassisted. This happened by SKC possessing the ball in their defensive half, while St. Louis was offering what I would call modest pressure. They were basically containing. They were running a contained defense where they were just keeping SKC from breaking lines with passes centrally, and they were just slowly moving them back into their defensive zone. They weren't really pressuring the ball. They were just preventing movement forward. And unfortunately, SKC switched right to left on their side, and they were able to hit a quick long ball to speed things up, get out in transition. And it was Dejan Joveljic who ends up getting the ball in the attacking half, and his shot is blocked. However, it falls right to Capita outside the box, just puts the shot on a dime for that top bin, and it gets past Lund. And on this one, Santi, I'm tipping my cap. There's not much more I feel you could do on this one outside of do a better job of containing and turning the ball over higher up on the field. But this was a goal that is just a magnificent goal that you struggled defending unless you say Thomas Totland could have stepped up on the ball. However, Totland was outside or at the edge of the 18-yard box. So if you're asking him to step up, then you're saying he's leaving his defensive work inside the box or at the edge of the box. I just have too much of a hard time to criticize that. And more, this is a moment where you just tip your cap for a fantastic shot.
For sure. It was a fantastic shot. One of those that probably 80% of the time is not a goal, or maybe higher, but yeah, he just went for it. Yeah, maybe Tottenham could have gotten closer, but at the same time, it was a great shot, and it was a great shot by Capita, and Lund almost got it, but it was just too far for him to get it. But yeah, it's one of those goals that changes things, because instead of going up 2-0 at halftime, you are now on a 1-goal game, and
Mhm.
any mistakes or anything that happens early in the second half could make it a tight game. So yeah, it's one of the phases that we talk about, and it's too bad that when the team seemed to be dominating and putting the game away, it allowed a goal.
So we go into halftime. We have St. Louis dominating pretty much everything when it comes to the aggression, the clinical finishing. Not a lot of chances created by KC. It was a 1.16 to a 0.16 XG for St. Louis in that first half. 3 of 11 shots on target and shots to just 1 of 4 shots on target to shots for SKC. St. Louis had 58% possession in the first half, and they dominated field tilt. They had doubled SKC on passes in the opposition half, passes in the final third, and passes in the opposition box. So they had all of the momentum, all of the underlying numbers in that first half. What they didn't have was a 2-goal lead. And because of that, I think SKC knew that they didn't have to necessarily be as desperate or as aggressive and leaving themselves open. They could play it a little bit more intelligently. What we ended up seeing in the second half were 3 halftime subs. Rafael Santos came in for Conrad Vollum. Santos moved to left wing back, and Totland moved over to right wing back. And then SKC made 2 subs. Amir Carrick, one of their new arrivals, came in for Jake Davis, or for Jay Reed, and then Jake Davis came in for Ian James. Yeah. So defensively, they made a couple changes to shore things up. And then as this second half progressed, a lot of the numbers by the end definitely skewed towards SKC. So while I felt that this second half was very back and forth, very physical, a lot of scrambling, when you look at the numbers, SKC had the advantages in field tilt with the passes into the final third, in the box, and they had the advantage in possession slightly, 52 to 48. So the second half was definitely more open, more back and forth, and had a little bit more chaos to it. But it wasn't until 76 minutes that a goal was scored. Before that, you saw multiple subs. 64 minutes, we brought in Miguel Perez for Sangbin Zhang that moved Edu Leuven up to the right 10. This kind of reinforces that depth that we were talking about earlier, where you're still looking at Miguel Perez as that next option behind Edu Leuven at central midfield, while it gives you the flexibility to sub off Sangbin, who had been running. We know a lot, and Edu Leuven took that right 10 position before Leuven would eventually give way later on in the game. But then after SKC made a sub at 75, so they brought in Kwaku Agibang and Ethan Barlow for Zoan Basong and Orb Lorien. The goal was scored. So it was, I would say, some suspect possession by St. Louis. So if you're watching on the video, let's take a peek at what that looked like once the possession ended for St. Louis. And before I look at this, actually, Santi, I did want to talk about what happened before the Ben Lund pass. I think it was frustrating, to say the least, the midfield work that was occurring for St. Louis in that moment. So if you go back and watch the video, you'll see that Daniel Edelman was the pivot point as the back line was trying to progress the ball. Edelman was working with, I think it was Dante Pulvera at the time, to try and progress the ball through SKC. And it almost seemed like Miguel Perez was shadowing Daniel Edelman. He was like stuck on a string to Edelman, staying a little too close for my comfort. I'm not quite sure what the intent is, if it's to facilitate a give and go, a very quick pass, and then Edelman will move forward for a quick pass in return. But whatever it wasn't working. And I feel that kind of disconnect or miscommunication, mistime, whatever it was, led to the ball being played back. St. Louis was clearly trying to restart their possession. They didn't like what they were doing on that left side in that channel, so they tried to restart it back to goal. And we kind of know what happens after that. After Ben Lund gets the ball, there's an opportunity for a pass to his right near the end line, but he tries to break it down the middle, and it ends up turning it over. One pass from Manu Garcia over to Dejan Joveljic, and it's a goal scored. What did you make of this? What could have been done different outside of Ben Lund making a better decision in his pass?
Yeah, obviously, what happened before, the team didn't seem to have a way to get out in possession, and maybe Miggy was too close to Edelman. But at the same time, if you get to that point where the opponent is pressing you so much, instead of trying to touch it to the middle, just boot it out. It's okay. Sometimes it's not gonna work, and you just have to kick the ball, and then you can reposition yourself. But but yeah, it's just obviously it's easy to say the next day and in a slow motion when you look at these replays, but
Mhm.
it's a microseconds when it's happening live. So not sure what was going through Ben Loon's head, but that happens. That happens. You were talking at the beginning of the show that before the break he was the hero in Open Cup, and yeah, you will have good games, bad games, and unfortunately on the game he had to start because this issue with Berkey, he had this unfortunate play, but he will bounce back from that if he has to continue playing for a few games.
If if it ends up being the Lunton Oliveira show at keeper for an extended period of time, yeah, I'm still not too down on Ben Lunt. I know we have limitations on what he can do on the ball, and this is probably going to be something that the team has to gloss over or find a solution for, and not put him in positions to be pressured on the ball like that, because his distribution is one area where there's a clear distinction between him and Berkey. You know, you can shot stopping, you could argue quality in goal in general, intangibly, but distribution and passing, I think, is a clear-cut advantage to Roman Berkey, and it's not even close. So that happened at 76. We're tied at 2-2. We go into 86. SKC has just made a sub, Stephen Afrifa for Capita, and St. Louis continues to pressure. They get the ball to Daniel Edelman over in the box at 86, or around 83, 84. And then a cross gets sent in from Daniel Edelman, and it goes off of Ethan Barlow, who was one of the recent subs just 10 minutes earlier. And it goes off of Barlow's foot, and then it goes off Barlow's hand, and then it goes out of bounds, and it's called back for VAR. VAR is looked at then by the head ref, and it's confirmed that Barlow's arm changed the direction of the ball. A PK is given. Edu Leuven buries the PK, and at 86 minutes, St. Louis goes up 3-2. So I'm curious, Santi, what you think of the call itself. On the replays, on the video, even live, did you think it was a handball? And what are your thoughts afterwards, after seeing some of the reviews and replays?
Yeah, no, live right away. I thought it was a handball, and we called that on the broadcast. I actually thought it was a better shot that went to Barlow's arm. And I tried to look at the replay a couple of times for the show, and yeah, I still see it still looks like it was better, but regardless, yeah, it was a clear call. And I was surprised that the referee didn't call it, and we had to go to VAR to for him to take a look at it and confirm. But yeah, it was a good sequence, good pass by Edelman, and Becher also, assuming he shot it, he got that shot that I'm thinking he got. He basically participated in that goal too.
You're right. That was an Edelman cross into Becher. That's what I had wrong. Becher actually got the foot on it, and that's when it hit Barlow, going right up, hitting his arm, and then deflecting off. I think Barlow and Manu Garcia maybe were trying to argue that it hit his chest and went off.
No.
But I think that hand extended in the very unnatural position as you're in that movement, and the ball clearly hitting that area of him and then deflecting it, the trajectory that it changed. I think that's what made it clear that it was the arm, after you looked at about 3 different angles, and you could see ball from Becher, ball up, arm extended, hits, and then deflects. So that's another one to me where the only argument that you can have potentially against that is that it wasn't called on the field, and VAR had to bring it back, and you're looking at clear and obvious. That's the only possible anti-argument. But other than that, you look at the replays, and unless you're the most diehard of homers, that ball looks like it's going off the arm.
I think even on the it's clear and obvious. I don't see anything that could tell, oh, it's questionable. It hit the chest or it hit the shoulder. No, it was clear and obvious.
It hit the arm. Yeah. So that's the third of the goals that happen, and it's the third of the complaints that SKC fans have found a way to make. But at the end of the day, Leuven and Totland exited the game a couple minutes after that for Tomas Ostrak and Hazy Larosco. This was Tomas Ostrak's MLS debut in 2026. He had appeared in the US Open Cup prior, but this was his first MLS match that he appeared in. So Ostrak came in at the right 10 position, which Johan Deme had told me on Tuesday that he sees Ostrak preferred in the attack, which is notable going forward if you're setting lineups. And then Haziel Roscoe came in for Thomas Totland, like for like, at that right wing back defensive position. And then the other notable thing to end the game is that besides the back and forth nature of how things were ending and the scramble, Palmer Alt made his Major League Soccer debut after being signed this week and making the matchday roster over Brendan McSorley. Palmer Alt made his debut at 90+6. So congratulations to Palmer Alt for making his MLS debut, having that nice patch, and now it will be part of trading card history. Not much of a difference maker coming in at 90+6, but it's always good to celebrate an MLS debut.
Yeah. We didn't see an extended time of him, but yeah, he had good movement and had almost like a half chance created. In the end, he couldn't find a teammate to pass the ball to, but yeah, good debut. Signed this week. Obviously, where the team is still looking for that number 9, but he could be an option out of the bench. But yeah, we'll see what happens in the rest of the transfer window. But it still is great to start with 3 points against your rival. So credit to the team for fighting until the end and finding that play to get the PK. One thing I wanted to mention is I before that PK play, Ostrak was ready to come in, and the team had already handled the paper to the 4 referee, and it was just a matter of the ball going out for that substitution to be made. But as long as that was called and the game was stopped to review, City stopped the substitution, and Ostrak had to wait for a minute or two after the goal.
Serendipitous timing for Edu Leuven, because Marcel Hartl's goal was the 100th Major League Soccer goal scored at Energizer Park, and Edu Leuven gets goal 101, as City said, to get them off and running towards their next 100. So that's exciting, and yet Ostrak still had a debut, and like some people call me Tim in the chat, Ostrak came in hot, and I liked that. I like that Ostrak came in.
Yeah,
I like that he stayed healthy. He didn't come out with an injury. So the more Ostrak we can get and the more time he gets in the second half, I think our team will be better, because I still think his style of play and his individual qualities fit Johan Deme's system so well. So I'm looking forward to more of him.
Yeah. He came in with a lot of energy, like running and trying to recover the ball, to press opponents. It was a good debut for him.
You worry about that sometimes, though, if you're too aggressive and you try to do too much in such a tight period of time. But I think Ostrak did fine, and it was exciting to see him.
I thought about it, but just considering what the team did with him, that they shut him down on purpose and said, let's get him fully recovered so he's ready for the second half of the season. When I thought, I was like, oh, well, he has been preparing for this. And yeah, it's the first competitive game, but he had enough time to recover.
Agreed. So St. Louis closed it out. The second half was a back and forth physical contest. St. Louis now is on a 6-match unbeaten streak in all competitions, 5 wins and 1 draw, with a 6 wins in their last 8. Edu Leuven was named man of the match, a goal and an assist. He had that hockey assist on the Marcel Hartl goal. It is Leuven's second MLS goal this year, 4th in all comps in 2026. His second MLS assist, 3rd assist in all comps. Sang Ben Zhang had a goal. That's his second MLS goal of the season and 10th of his MLS career. Marcel Hartl had a goal, 4th of the season. He leads the team in goals and has 7 in all competitions. You mentioned Betcher had an assist as well. He leads the team in assists. I feel we gave some flowers to guys like Dante Polvera, Daniel Edelman, etc. earlier. So as St. Louis closes this one out, they, as I mentioned earlier, are now closer to 3rd place in the West than they are last place. It's a pretty tightly contested conference, but St. Louis now sits at 19 points with 5 wins, 6 losses, and 4 draws. That is a much more respectable position than the beginning of May. I cannot overstate how night and day of a difference the conversation needs to be now versus what it was at the very beginning of May after that Austin defeat on May 2nd. 5 wins, 6 losses, 4 draws, Santi. That is a marked improvement to the point where we are now 1 point out of playoff position, the LA Galaxy at 20 points, and 3 points out of a secure playoff position without playing a play-in game that Houston has at 22 points. And SKC falls now to 3 wins, 10 losses, and 2 draws, 11 points in 15 matches. The vibes should be high for St. Louis right now.
Yeah, for sure, and especially after that first portion of the season with 6 points in 10 games. Now the next 5 games you get 13 points. So yeah, great progress by the team, making up a lot of that ground that it had between where they were and 9th place, and now 1 point behind LA Galaxy. And even though they play game today, and we'll have one more game than City next week, that will be the opponent. I'm sure we have a preview of that, but it's coming. It's starting to be like that time of the year where you play against direct opponents, and it was very important to start with a win yesterday ahead of that game against LA Galaxy.
Santi, we'll have a preview pod for Flyover Footy before the LA Galaxy game, but just a quick look ahead. It is important to note that as earlier as we haven't even reached the midway point of the season yet, but this is the first time I think we can tangibly look at an opponent upcoming on the schedule and say, this is one of those direct playoff implication opportunities. A lot can change between now and the end of the season, but they are the next team. They are the one team in the way of us right now as we record this from a spot in the playoffs. So that's what this match has. And in the chat, as Chris Klein had said, Galaxy upcoming, no Klaus, no Peck. This is going to be interesting. No Klaus, he's injured. Peck has been transferred. No Ricky Puig, he's obviously out for the season. So this is not the strongest of Galaxy sides that we'll face. And we'll face them next Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Central in Carson at Dignity Health Sports Park, before we return home to Energizer Park on July 25th against the Colorado Rapids. And then we have Real Salt Lake at home ahead of that. So a lot of matches in not a lot of time coming up. So this weekend, everybody's off for the World Cup. We have the 3rd place game on Saturday, France and England. We have the World Cup final on Sunday, Spain and Argentina. Can't wait to watch that. But this feels like a good weekend to be a City fan at this point, knowing what the result we had. We beat our rivals, knowing that there's work that the front office is actively talking about. Pieces are getting moved around the puzzle, I think, in anticipation of this. So things like signing Palmer Alt, things like recalling Christian Oliveras, whatever's going on with Roman Berkey, like this feels like a moment from a front office perspective where pieces are being moved around the chessboard to set up these bigger signings. And I think the only question from a roster perspective right now is that Oliveras and the Berkey situation, because with Oliveras being recalled, I can't remember if we mentioned this earlier or before recording, Santi, but just to get it out there, Oliveras returning to the roster makes us have 11 out of 10 supplemental roster spots. So unless something else changes, somebody from the supplemental roster will have to move up and take one of those senior spots. So that's why we mentioned could Roman Berkey be a short-term injury candidate? Would something else happen? And it's also important to remember that none of the roster does not have to be finalized until early October. There's a roster lock date that exists in Major League Soccer after the transfer window is closed to allow teams to do all of their work and then get their affairs in order to be roster compliant heading into the final portion of the season. And that doesn't occur until October. So we talk about this stuff real time, but it is not of any concern at the moment that we have 11 out of 10 supplemental roster guys and one would take up a senior spot. It's all in flux. Ray has all the time in the world to make us compliant. There can be lots of options to make sure that we don't have to do that, move a supplemental guy to the senior, and we can actually fill those with more high dollar, high value players. Don't panic about anything on that front. I think now is the time to be a happy City fan.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a City fan. World Cup week with the semifinals, now final on Sunday, and what a better way to get ready for that with a win against your rival who was talking about being too busy but didn't show it on the field.
Absolutely. Santi, anything else for this game you want to talk about before we go?
No, I think we can end it there. Happy podcast. It's been a good 5 games for us talking about good results. So let's hope that continues.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is a comment from 433 in the chat. Flowers for DeMay. This team looked good. Despite our current players and roster, can't wait to see what he can do with 2 or 3 more players on Hartle or Leuven's level. Cheers to that. We'll end the pod on that note. For Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Fallout on Flyover Footy, looking at the 3-2 win, St. Louis City over Sporting KC. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the World Cup. We'll be back next week to preview the LA Galaxy, and we'll talk to you later. Go City.
Vamos City.
All right, that's it. Thanks everybody for your tuning in. Appreciate you all enjoying this post-win day of City, and enjoy the World Cup this weekend wherever you're going to watch it. We'll be back later next week, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, guys.